Hello, welcome everyone to today's The Engineer Whisperer podcast. I'm super excited to invite my friend here from Seattle. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Wonderful to be here, Andrea. Wonderful.
Yes, I'm super excited. And before we start, give us a little bit of background about who you are.
Wow, that's going to be a varied one because I have, you could say, transitioned from being a lead maintenance guy to a teacher to a IT director for 14 years to being a head of people in a software company. And, it really comes down to I have to tell myself a different story all the time when I choose to do something new and different, um, to find my way. So
Well, I invited you here today because of this, because of these transitions, to share your stories with us and share your wisdom. So, maybe let's start with the transition from IT to people management. I think most people think that's a really big gap there. For some people, maybe it seems like the Grand Canyon. And but you bridged it, you jumped it over. So somehow you did it. So really today I'm curious to hear how you did it, what motivated you to do it, and why you did it. So, where would you like to start?
that's I will say that's out of all the different transitions, that's the one that's kind of yeah, it is the biggest gap one, where how did you end up in people and culture and HR? And it's usually followed by what the F in the process. And on top of that, and you know me well enough, um, I'm very atypical even when it comes to HR. And so what it meant was I had to follow what I really wanted to do. And that meant I had to change my story. I'm not an IT person. Like if somebody asked me what I did in IT, I said, well, I was a social scientist who did sociology, anthropology, and neuroscience. And that's how I addressed IT. I was an anthropologist. I didn't do it as a technologist, which meant in my transition, because I had a tech company where I taught high school, and I got hired away from high school to run the IT space. And here I am. I'm a social science dork, but I also a tech nerd, and
So,
that
how did you
meant
combine those two? How could you be?
well, no, this was the exact thing. Like even from the beginning standpoint, and I hope this actually resonates with your listeners and watchers. Is how you can't do tech because you don't have a strict background in tech. Well, that meant I had to go, well, I tried stuff and I played in it and I created a startup and did that for a while, which meant I had to be techie where I wasn't considered techie. But what I stayed was what do I how to value myself and being human. And I applied that in the space and then changed my story. Well, if I could be Paul in this space, I can be Paul in the tech space. And I did it. It was doing it as a hobby. So maybe if somebody's in tech and they're interested in the people operations in HR, if they've been dabbling into the emotional space of how do we care for each other, how do we become a leader in this space, how do I step into that when everybody thinks I'm this? Because I am going to tell myself a story that says I know I'm also this,
Yes, well,
and that
we are.
experiencing that moved me into tech. And the reason I'm bringing that up first
Yes.
is I ended up as an IT director for 14 years, and I'll tell you what that's envelops, which was R&D setups, operational effectiveness, and multipliers for performance. I had to be able to configure an ASA, and the tech nerds will know what that is, so I'm not going to explain it. And or set up cloud infrastructures that mimicked huge customer infrastructures like Verizon. So it would be, multiple terabytes, 6 thing servers with load balancers and all this kind of stuff. And I had to wrap my head around that. Well, if I stayed in my old story, it's like, well, that's not what I do. And that was going to limit me. And so I would go, well, let's give it a try. I had the same thing with in my construction stuff. I didn't know how to do certain things in construction. So I might have to buy a few more pieces of lumber, or I might have to buy another piece of marble, or I might have to do something if I make a mistake. But I'll never get into that space to be able to do something. I'm willing to do that, to go in there and just F it up. And so I ended up in IT, and I immediately went to, wait a minute. So I didn't do it as a technologist. See, I'm defining myself right now. What am I? But
Yeah.
I had to do the roles of a technologist, which
So,
is
so
somebody.
Paul, with you, it's that you were interested first in the people and on the psychological side of leading, and then you moved into the IT. So, I'm curious, what kept you in IT? What was that what interested you in IT enough to say that I can play in this area, I will be curious in this area, as you said, and I will keep learning in this area.
Again, now this goes to the, how was I defining myself in the space? What self-talk, what voice was I listening to?
I see.
And it was the social science anthropology Paul voice. um, and so others tell me, no, you can't do that unless you have an MCSC. You can't do that unless you have this training in Cisco. You can't do this unless you're not. Yet I would interact and work with my teams, and I would learn these things. Now, why I did that was I constantly kept my frame of, what if I thought about the technology space this way? That this becomes a force multiplier for people to be able to do the work they want to do with less pain and frustration. In other words, what made it easy for them to just shoot the moon? And so that was the whole idea of our technology. And I used the frame of, what do people always do? What have we done for 50,000 years? Tried to find a better way. Yeah, you can't, in technology, if you do things to find a better way, and at the same time kind of screw everybody up in the process, but this is technology and this is how you're going to do it, even though it made life worse, that was the wrong way. And so I began to adopt this and bring the people side in. And then when I would work with my people, I would go, okay, this is not a technology problem, this is a people problem. I'm maybe doing something not as good as I could be as a boss in a technology space. Maybe I'm not listening well enough. Maybe I'm not guiding well enough. Maybe I'm not being vulnerable enough to share. Okay, you're killing me with these decisions you're making that aren't calculating how the downstream impact is. And if I'm willing to share that with my teammates, that's different than, you did that wrong, you broke everybody downstream. One says, hey, I'm
I
feeling
see.
vulnerable about this and this is making things worse. What can we do to not do this again, please?
What a different leadership, though. I mean, part of the reason I invited you here is for for you, the audience, to hear. But it's even in me, even right now, as you're speaking, this really powerful thought. Kind of what a different leaders, what a difference in leadership to have this mindset of I have these great people with great knowledge and great talent that I'm leading, and to provide them with the opportunity to get better, to improve, to grow, to do great things from an IT, from a tech perspective. What do they need? They need a lot of trust, support, leadership, guidance, and so forth. So I
and
think
and
sometimes,
their own autonomy in that space.
yes. So I think sometimes we forget that it's,
Because if they can get to own what they want, that's a problem too. But so that, it was really interesting because I know I drove my early, especially probably drove them nuts the whole time. Um, but in the early part of it, I kept bringing them back. we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with human beings. Therefore, I'm asking you to change the way you interact with the human beings, as opposed to being, if anybody has seen the Saturday Night Live tech guy with it's Jimmy Fallon playing him. He's this rude technologist. Move, get out of the way. Oh, I can't believe you're doing that something, and he would use like nerdy tech language and be totally rude. Um, so that was, I had to go, I could have said to the story of things back into the transition, well, this is just the way tech people are.
Yes. Yep.
I refused to go in that space, and I stayed curiously or stubbornly curious uh, to go, no, if I'll put the time in, this is how we'll rewrite it. And what ended up happening, and this will be that this is transition move also. We created a space in the IT group, and it was called the Sanctuary. Not the sanctuary to come in and do whatever you want, bad, rude, disgusting, and whatever, but the sanctuary where somebody could come to if they wanted to figure out a better way to do something in their department or their division of the company.
Oh.
And this came about because my team and I, we worked together, and this is how we, kind of modeled and plotted through solving problems so we could scale the technology capabilities, or I should say, scale the people uh, abilities through technology.
Well, and
And
people's ability to work with change, to adapt to change, because
right.
the other side is when we're talking technology and IT, there are a lot of customers
Oh,
involved who are receiving this technology
oh,
and
absolutely.
this change. So they are going through their own change management and their own psychological process of transitioning through this change.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Um, and so that kind of process of setting the space for it to happen. I mean, and I was going through this in a adaptive retailing, oh, and I'll go somewhere and it's like, you work in IT? You don't talk like you work in IT. I says, yeah, I've been an IT director for like 12 years. But you get people. And I went, well, and actually this is a really good one for anybody in the technology space. Now, whether you're engineer figuring things out, but if you're interested in going towards the people and you watch people and like you can kind of like engineer observe how people actually do things.
Mhm.
And not from a click standpoint, but from an emotive why they do things for each other, and then maybe even why they don't do things for each other.
Yes.
um, and that becomes a key thing. But in that going through it back and forth, I would have to just stay the course and look for the spaces that would reward that. And what ended up happening is now even myself and my department was seen as the place to become better organizationally in the culture, because it wasn't you have to follow your technology, we made the rule, we're the technologists.
Yeah.
It was, here's why we're doing this, to make the ability for you guys to scale your work at a 5x and give your autonomy so you don't have to keep asking IT for things.
Mhm.
That is a terrible waste of time.
And you opened up the door for them to come in and ask questions and learn about this change, and in their, as I said, in their own ways, for them to transition. Um wow, that is super cool. I love this idea of sanctuary
But
and being able to.
but this was the cool thing for me. I had to go, oh, I'm aware of what's going on here in the organization. And then at some point there was the full-on executive leadership team, and then the director was part of that as the 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 guy who really got culture. And back to the identity thing, when somebody would ask me what I did, I said, well, I'm the janitor of ones and zeros. I'm an IT director. And they would go, huh? I says, have you ever seen The Breakfast Club? It's a really fun movie. And there's a janitor and this authoritarian guy who's punishing the kids for the discipline time. He goes, asks a question about why he gets things. And he goes, well, I'm the eyes and the ears of this institution. So I might have had a lot of keys to everything, but I didn't necessarily have the authority chain power. But what I did have was the presence of mind to know that, oh, I have ears that will hear. That would be a great place to work, which is what I wanted to design for myself. And so my department is how I design it. Would I want to work for me in this space? Would I want to work for one of my employees in this space? Because if I would, then I figure if it's caring and they get to be totally them and they get to care for and take ownership of me also, even as their boss,
Yeah.
then I'm doing it right. And so I started making these shifts.
Yeah.
And then I became, I was absolutely bored to hell with technology. I didn't want to do it anymore. And that I decided, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go find a place where I get to just do the people operations, the HR and people op. Now this meant letting go of a very valued space of technology, of income even, to, oh, yeah, but you don't have a SHRM background. You don't have this. No, I have my bachelor's is in social sciences, and I've been doing technology for 14 years. And it was the back of my hand, technology. And then it was like, okay, so I can do this. This is the proof is there. I've already been part of the executive leadership team for a few years on company culture and trying to bring it back. And it's like, well, I'm going to go for it, which then led to, how the F did you become head of HR? That makes no sense, was what I would hear.
you you're definitely getting people to kind of stop and think and ask you these questions of wait, what?
Yeah.
But let me back up. So in every transition, I believe that, you know, part of transitioning in the change is something is ending in order for something else to begin.
Hmm.
So tell us, I'm curious, in your transition from IT to now head of HR, what was something that you had to be okay saying goodbye to in order to begin to belong in that space?
Oh God. Um, the security, the economic security that comes with being on the forefront and well grounded. And this was in, you could say, technology operations. And I'm a fan of organizational operating systems that give you high people involvement.
Mhm.
So I had really figured kind of that part out. For example, doing certain types of cloud adaptation and using that, I did the math on an Excel spreadsheet of how much more productive we could be in the technology. So I'm paying attention to that kind of stuff. So I'm going, oh my God, if I leave this space, that means I have to say goodbye to that. I'll call it economic kind of security slash freedom. Because and I remember when I decided this was it, I was done. And this was even a later time when I was doing some other stuff. Somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I have a company that has a 9-month contract need," and I was out on my own at that point, coaching. So I did a time jump. So I'm a sci-fi dork. I can do that. Um, but I remember him saying, "It pays $300 an hour for you to go through, and I know you can do this stuff because I saw some of the work you did at Fulcrum." And he knew me when I was an IT director.
Okay.
And I'm like going, "Yeah, no, I that sounds terrible to me." And it was, and at that point, I mean, that's 2017, 18. It was $300 an hour, but I didn't want to go that way. But I had kind of like a premonition. Oh, geez, I'm going from a space here to another space, and it's not to create gender divisions, but you don't see a lot of guys as head of people in HR. And so in the process of becoming and choosing to take that role, I joined the global HR group and HRT, which is a local HR space with Carol from Carol Olsby, and I love her to death. She's like my mentor. So I got in touch with somebody, and I found out, oh, I love how they think, and I can go to them and ask questions, and I can hire them to help with things, so that I could keep this dream I had, which was I don't want to do technology. I'll do things related to technology. I can share about your operational things and how your people respond and
Yeah,
joke
and you
around like that.
understand it. So that's the
Yeah,
part
yeah,
where
that was no problem.
you have the skill,
Yeah, but
but
I was
you
like,
wanted
I
to.
want to go this way, and
Yes.
that really meant letting go. Like I even feel that's kind of weird. I even feel it right now of this crazy level of economic security, which meant like taking a role as a head of people was going to hit a certain economic level. Staying as a maybe moving towards a CTO level or a VP of technology and cloud and whatever else, that was going to put me at least twice that salary.
Yeah.
And that meant leaving that space and a space that literally, oh, hey, the ASA went down and the Jenkins server, it might be related to that because right now we can't push the software build out to with a Verizon deployment. And that's not going to bode well for us. Like I can thought process that like it's nothing. That was a finger snap, by the way. Um,
Well, Paul, I love this because I think so many people, I love how you said that you still feel the emotions, because that is part of storytelling as we go through transitions, is that transitioning is that psychological process where we go through the emotional side. We feel the change. That's what I call it. We feel
oh
the
yeah,
change
absolutely.
because we're trying to understand our change and the change we're going through, eh, from, with our mind of, okay, what is going on, what is the situation, and then we're trying to navigate it through, like, who do I trust, who do I talk to, how do I make decisions. So these are all external situational, but then there's this third level that we all go through. And if you're going through a change, you're going to go through this emotional transition, is you're trying to understand and navigate yourself emotionally, because there's new emotions show up, or maybe the level of your emotions that you felt before, like scared and anxiety and overwhelmed, now they're, over the roof. Like, I've never felt this way. That would be a common sentence that
Or
I
why am I
hear.
feeling this way again?
Yes.
Because and that's that like the SL2 where we go, oh, this is gonna be great. And then it's like, oh damn, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. You get help. And then you get really good and you're like, I'm badass. And then you go, oh, I'm gonna try this. Oh shit, it goes all over again. But
Yes.
I will say this. The key thing was I didn't leave to what would happen was will they is there a space they've created for me? I that would put me as a victim to circumstance if I'm
Yeah.
going to make the change.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
that meant
mhm.
just like I did, and I had to go back and do how have I done things in the past? Uh, Creating a space, we had the sanctuary. The sanctuary was a place where people could literally become better people in the process of doing things, including me, myself, and my own team.
Yeah.
So that meant okay, if I can do this, I can reach out and make these contacts, which means I have my own agency
Mm.
to make what I want happen, even though I'm literally I'll go to some place, and I can tell you this, where I meet, there's 4 or 5 HR people. Hey, this introduce Paul, blah blah blah. He's head of people and culture at Fulcrum, and they go, oh, and he used to be an IT director. And literally, I've been in that situation where maybe a third of them go, and that was a sigh face and a ugh face that
They
for
have
those.
no words what to say next.
And I had to choose to go, you know what? I don't know why they're gonna be that way. They don't know me. They haven't experienced me. And when they do, that'll change.
Yeah.
And I would have to keep that in play. And then on top of that, then I had someone like Carol going, oh, you got to meet Paul. You're gonna love him. And talking about crazy experience, he's actually gone through and been in the dregs of IT and understands how the systems and the people work in the space, so that now you can get an idea from him of what it's really like to uh, do the people operations and HR with IT. And
With
so,
IT. Wow. Yeah.
but
Highlight that one.
but creating that space, I had to be willing to do that, whether or not somebody would, love it or not.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about agency and, going back to the emotional side because change will feel different, will feel intense. So for you, what, because we talked about ending something
Hmm.
and then beginning, but there's in the middle this wilderness, I call it this emotional wilderness.
Yeah.
So, how did you find your agency? How did you connect with the agency when you were maybe they were, because we all have those days when we are very far away from trusting and believing in ourselves. So, unless we have created a path to get there, we might get lost within ourselves now. So, tell
Hmm.
us, share with us, how did you in those days when, as you're navigating the external situation and then you're getting these feedback from people where you're like, I don't know who Paul is because I can't really put him because he
I don't.
didn't
Yeah,
follow the
I don't fit in a
normal.
box for
Because
nothing.
yes, you don't fit in the box, you're different. So internally, how you navigate in that and then how you find the trust in yourself.
So that's a twofold space. And that's I will it's an aspect of self-belonging, and then having a circle of people that I deeply belong with. Because there's always a time where we just don't believe in ourselves.
Yep.
And when somebody says, "Oh no, you always," no, that's not true. We run out of gas,
Yep.
we say F it,
Yep.
we're like, no. And that's important because now we have an inner voice, and I have two committees. I have an inner itty bitty shitty committee, which is not caring for me all the time, and maybe sometimes blowing smoke up my butt. The other time though, I'll have an inner itty bitty gritty committee. That's an internal voice that will give me the talk of correction. It'll also give me the talk of don't quit. And I get those voices like, and I will say directly from my wife. Honestly, or even over the years and working with you, Andrea, I have Andrea in my gritty committee, always. And so having that allows us to navigate that wilderness, and you made it, it's not the wrong road, it's just an unexpected destination. I think you did a post like that just
I
recently.
did, I
That was
did, I
brilliant.
did. Yes.
um
There are no wrong turns, only
yeah.
unexpected destinations.
Right. Okay, now so for that, as long as we're keeping ourselves in a space to keep going towards the direction we want to go,
Yes.
then I can know I'm making progress. Like in rock climbing, you'll have an approach to get to the climb, which is funny because you think it's all about the climb. Actually, half of it's even just getting to the freaking climb. And you might think you can get to this point and you realize, oh, we can't get there from this ridge. We have to go back down to this little valley and then come around the ridge because, well,
Yeah.
that's just not going to work that way.
Yeah, your perspective changes as you get
It
closer
all
to the
changed.
destination as we talk,
Yeah.
right? It's not that the destination changes, the top will be still there, but how you get
Yep.
there,
But
that
how we're going to get there. And when you go with somebody, and this is nerdish, but your neurochemistry and belonging gives you a sustained state of oxytocin, serotonin. I get it with, I'm going to show a picture of one of my dogs hanging out, which is one of my office mates. My my wife, some dear friends. As long as I have that, it'll always give me internally, and maybe this is a little nerdy, but I will always have a neurochemical set that helps me in that too, and that comes from my belonging. And if I'm alone and wandering, because I do that a lot, even with my dogs, I have those voices that I keep in the committee, my gritty committee, and that really helps because now I can wander. And even if I've gone off a path just to scout things out and try to get there faster, which it works or doesn't work. Um, I always have a place to come back to.
yeah.
And without that, we shift into a very negative space that doesn't help us.
Yeah.
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 So
I
there.
totally resonate with you that, I mean, I've seen people go further, become stronger, um, than they have imagined because they are doing it with someone, they are doing it for someone,
Hmm.
and that someone is encouraging them to just push 1% over the limit, their self limit that
Yeah.
they thought they're
Even their
capable of.
self with you. Yeah. But, and then
So,
but they have your back in that.
oh, of course. I mean, it's as you said that it's almost, I call it a psychological guarantee because
Oh, oh God, I love that.
when when you know that that someone has your back, it's like the trapeze
A
artists.
psychological guarantee.
Yes, it's the
I
net. It's the artist can experiment and jump higher and do new and crazy jumps because they know that there's a net, not because they want to fall in the net, not
Mm,
because
mm.
they they are relying on the net, they want to avoid the net, but they know it's
Yeah,
there, it's
they don't even ever want to touch the net.
exactly.
But
But without the net, which let's say maybe they never touch, maybe they do, but it's they knowing that they have a net, that someone has their back, in this case the net or a person. We are capable of doing, as I said, so
we'll
much
actually
more.
we'll stay in that trapeze artist space. We'll actually soar. Well, we
Or
will fly through the air. Um, the last thing I'd really like to offer, though, is also anybody who's in whether it's technical engineering of computer stuff or mechanical or whatever, and you're in that space and you're stepping out into that leadership thing. Don't also forget that your mind's ability to look at things and how to frame things and structure things will help you create new structures that you can use in your leadership if you are choosing to go that direction in like the HR space. You can actually use those skills to do it. As a matter of fact, if I look at my belonging model and how it started as a teacher, in my technology, I was always looking at systems and interactions and how people went. I then kept refining it and refining it. And I finally came to a model which I think is pretty good, but it's still open to refining.
Mhm.
And I'd say that experience, I think don't just walk away from that.
I love that you said that because part of the work that I do with transitions and career transitions is as we're saying goodbye to things, we're also saying yes to continue with some things. Yes, transition is not about leaving everything behind, everything that you know and everybody that you know behind. It's that period of time when you choose what you're taking with you and what you are saying
Mm,
goodbye
mm,
to.
mhm. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it's so powerful what what you said is knowing what you want to take with you in your life, um, that you want to then build upon. Because I believe transitions and through change we grow, because if we believe transitions is this, again, this amazing opportunity that we have where we take what we learn and then we keep adding on it, then
Mhm.
growth will happen
Yeah.
very consciously and very intentionally, because we choose to be in that mindset that no, I'm not starting from scratch. I am not redefining myself. I am not a new person. I am going to be a new person in the sense that I will add to what I know. And that is, I think, that's how successful people do it.
And um, in that space when somebody's in there and somebody says, "You were an engineer. How did you end up doing people operations in HR?" And I'll tap into the Andrew post from this morning. Smile and say, "Yeah, isn't that cool?" Instead of focusing on the chasm that we talked about earlier, but to go, "Yeah, isn't that cool?" And then it's going it that whole act is going to shift things. Yeah, one in you,
Oh, yeah.
because instead of going, "Yeah, it was such a difficult thing," you'll be like, "Yeah, and man, I was able to do it because I was able to tell myself in the story and believe in me in the space." And so that's that's key.
I agree. Keeping the wonder, the curiosity in our
Yeah.
life, um, you know,
Oh, God. You're tapping into other things. If you could be that curious to turn into an engineer, to choose that life of figuring out stuff, to make a new way to do something, whether it's how a seatbelt works, to how the brakes works, or ABS brakes in a vehicle, whatever it is, if you can have that curiosity, you get to take that curiosity with you. And if you choose to go into, I want to lead in my space, or I want to go into the people up space, doesn't matter.
yes.
That same curiosity is your gift.
Oh, yes. Yes. It starts with imagine that you're taking your curiosity and you're putting it over here, bringing it over here, and is a gift. Yes. Well, Paul, it has been wonderful to sit down and have this discussion with you. And as we're closing, I want to give you the mic back. Close us out. What would you like to leave us with today?
The story you tell yourself is the story you live. And in that, make sure you belong in your own story. Because the moment you write a story where you might belong, if you might belong, you still don't belong.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Powerful.
Make
Wow.
it one that you actually belong in, which means, yeah, I'm going to do this. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Make your story, the one you tell yourself, one in which you really belong.
Powerful words. Well, on that note, thank you very much for being here today. It has been a pleasure.